You're going downtown for vehicle theft. People like you don't belong in cars like this. You belong in the back of my car, in handcuffs, exactly where you are going right now. The handcuffs clicked around Maya Thompson's wrists with a cold, metallic finality. Officer Derek Hansen shoved her hard against the hood of her pristine black Cadillac Escalade, pressing her face against the hot metal that had been baking under the Georgia sun for the past hour. The temperature was pushing 95 degrees, and the hood burned against her cheek, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to flinch. You're going downtown for vehicle theft, Officer Hansen snarled, his voice dripping with contempt as he cinched the handcuffs tighter than necessary. People like you don't belong in cars like this. You belong in the back of my car, in handcuffs, exactly where you are right now. Maya's phone sat just inches away on the passenger seat, its screen still glowing with encrypted messages from her FBI handler. 3 years of undercover work. 17 arrests. Countless sleepless nights spent building relationships with dangerous criminals who would kill her without hesitation if they discovered the truth. And now, all of it hung by a thread because a racist cop couldn't accept that a black woman might actually own a luxury vehicle. The Chevron station on Whitlock Avenue in Marietta, Georgia, had become an unexpected stage. Evening shoppers gathered in clusters, their phones raised like tiny witnesses, recording every second of the confrontation. A teenager named Marcus Williams stood 3 pumps away, his phone capturing footage that would eventually be viewed by 47 million people. But at that moment, nobody in that parking lot understood what they were witnessing. Nobody knew they were watching the first domino fall in what would become the biggest police corruption scandal the Atlanta metro area had seen in 2 decades. Say another word and I'll add resisting arrest to your charges, Hansen threatened, leaning close to Maya's ear. Know your place. You should be grateful I'm even giving you the chance to stay quiet. But let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began. 6 hours earlier, when Maya Thompson had no idea that a simple stop for gas would nearly destroy everything she had sacrificed 3 years to build. The Tuesday afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt as Maya pulled her government-issued Escalade into the Chevron station just after 2 in the afternoon. August in Georgia is unforgiving. The kind of heat that shimmers off the pavement and makes the air itself feel heavy. Maya stepped out of the SUV dressed in designer jeans and a crisp white blouse, the perfect costume for her undercover role as a wealthy businesswoman running a successful consulting firm. For 3 years, Maya had been living a double life. To the criminals she infiltrated, she was Maya Thompson, CEO of LTM Consulting, a savvy entrepreneur with connections to money and people who didn't ask too many questions. To her FBI handlers, she was Special Agent Maya Thompson, one of the most effective undercover operatives in the Atlanta field office. The operation she was running had already led to 17 arrests, but the big fish remained just out of reach. A corrupt city councilman named Raymond Price and his network of dirty cops had been funneling money through shell companies for years. Maya was 48 hours away from the final meeting that would bring down the entire operation. The wire she wore under her blouse felt heavier than usual as she swiped her credit card at pump 7. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the weight of knowing how close she was to finishing this assignment. Or maybe it was some sixth sense warning her that something was about to go terribly wrong. That's when Officer Derek Hansen's patrol car rolled into the station. Hansen had been a cop in Cobb County for 12 years. In that time, he had accumulated 43 official complaints for excessive force and racial profiling. 43 complaints, and not a single one had resulted in disciplinary action. His father-in-law, Harold Mitchell, sat on the county commission. His brother-in-law ran the local police union. Derek Hansen was what they call in law enforcement circles, untouchable. He operated with impunity, knowing that no matter what he did, someone would always be there to make the problem disappear. Hansen's eyes locked onto Maya the moment he pulled into the station. His gaze traveled from her face to the Escalade and back again. A young black woman, mid-30s, well-dressed, driving an $80,000 SUV in an area Hansen considered his personal territory. His prejudiced mind raced through possibilities, discarding any explanation that didn't fit his worldview. Drugs. Theft. Fraud. In Hansen's limited imagination, those were the only ways a black woman could afford a car like that. He stepped out of his patrol car with the casual confidence of a man who had never faced consequences for his actions. His hand rested on his service weapon as he approached Maya, his body language projecting authority and menace in equal measure. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." Maya's heart sank. She had been in dangerous situations before. She had once talked her way out of a warehouse surrounded by armed money launderers who suspected she was wearing a wire. She had sat across from men who casually discussed murder while she smiled and pretended to be one of them. But this was different. In those situations, she had control. She could use her training, her cover story, her wit. Here, she was powerless. She couldn't reveal her identity. Not now. Not when she was this close to bringing down the entire operation. If she told Hansen she was FBI, word would spread. The councilman would find out. His network of dirty cops would warn the criminals she had spent 3 years befriending. They would scatter, destroy evidence, and disappear. 3 years of work would vanish in an instant. But staying in character meant submitting to whatever this officer decided to do. "Is there a problem, officer?" Maya asked, keeping her voice calm and respectful. She used every ounce of her training to project cooperation rather than fear. Registration and insurance. Now. Hansen's tone left no room for negotiation. Maya nodded slowly, making sure to keep her hands visible. "Of course. Let me just reach into my purse for my wallet." But she never got the chance. The moment her hand moved toward her bag, Hansen's paranoia exploded into violence. His weapon was out of its holster before she could blink. "Hands where I can see them," he shouted, his voice echoing across the gas station. "Get on the ground. Now." The station erupted into chaos. Customers screamed and dove for cover behind their vehicles. A mother grabbed her 2 children and ran toward the convenience store. An elderly man dropped his coffee, the cup shattering on the concrete. And through it all, phones came out. Recording. Documenting. Bearing witness. Marcus Williams, 18 years old and home from his first year of college, stood frozen for only a moment before instinct took over. He pulled out his phone and hit record. Something deep in his gut told him that what he was watching needed to be seen. The video that would eventually rack up 47 million views had officially begun. Maya lowered herself to the hot pavement, the asphalt burning through her clothes. She placed her hands behind her head, assuming the position that countless black Americans before her had been forced into by officers who saw danger where there was none. "This vehicle is registered to LTM Consulting," she said carefully, her voice steady despite the gun pointed at her head. "I'm the CEO. The registration is in the glove compartment if you'd like to verify." Hansen laughed. It was a cruel, mocking sound that made several bystanders wince. "Sure you are, sweetheart. And I'm the President of the United States." He keyed his radio with his free hand. "Dispatch, I've got a 10 to 35 at the Chevron on Whitlock. Suspicious person, likely stolen vehicle. Subject is being combative. Requesting backup." Combative. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Maya hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't made any sudden movements. She had complied with every order. But Officer Derek Hansen was already building his narrative, constructing a story that would justify whatever came next. Maya recognized the pattern. She had seen it documented in dozens of FBI civil rights investigations. The strategy was always the same. Plant the story early. Get it on record. Create a false version of events before the truth has a chance to emerge. That way, when the reports are written, when the lawyers get involved, when the questions start being asked, there's already an official narrative in place. One that makes the officer look reasonable and the victim look dangerous. 2 more patrol cars arrived within minutes. Officers Janet Pierce and Robert Mallory stepped out, surveying the scene with expressions that told Maya everything she needed to know about what kind of cops they were. Officer Robert Mallory was on Maya's watch list. He was one of the dirty cops connected to Councilman Price's network. For months, Maya had been gathering evidence of Mallory's involvement in protecting criminal operations in exchange for bribes. If Mallory realized who she really was, if he connected the dots, he would warn the councilman immediately. The entire operation would collapse. Maya forced herself to remain calm as Mallory approached, his eyes scanning her with suspicion. She couldn't give him any reason to look deeper. She had to be exactly what her cover said she was, a businesswoman being unfairly targeted by an overzealous officer. Officer Janet Pierce, on the other hand, was harder to read. She stood slightly apart from the 2 men, her expression unreadable as she watched Hansen haul Maya to her feet and secure her wrists in handcuffs. "What VE we got, Derek?" Mallory asked, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Probable theft, possible narcotics," Hansen replied with the confidence of a man who had already decided on his verdict. "She claims she owns this Escalade. Wouldn't provide proper identification." Maya spoke up, her voice measured. "I didn't refuse to provide identification. You drew your weapon before I could reach for my wallet." Hansen's face flushed red. "Are you arguing with me? That's obstruction of justice. You're really not doing yourself any favors here." He turned to his colleagues with a smirk. "Can you believe this? Caught red-handed and she's still running her mouth." He yanked the handcuffs tighter, and Maya felt the metal bite into her wrists. She bit down on the inside of her cheek to keep from crying out. She would not give him the satisfaction. The crowd continued to grow. More phones appeared. More witnesses to the humiliation being inflicted on an innocent woman whose only crime was driving while black. The afternoon sun showed no mercy as Maya stood in handcuffs beside her own vehicle, sweat trickling down her back beneath the wire she wore. The device was recording everything. Every word Hansen spoke, every insult, every lie. Under normal circumstances, this would have been valuable evidence. But Maya knew that using this recording would mean exposing her identity and destroying 3 years of work. Officer Robert Mallory circled the Escalade like a predator examining its prey. His eyes lingered on the leather interior, the high-end sound system, the navigation display. Everything about the vehicle screamed luxury and success, and everything about Mallory's expression screamed disbelief that a black woman could legitimately own such things. "Nice car," Mallory commented, his tone dripping with accusation. "Very nice car. Must have cost, what, 80 grand? 90 with the options?" "It's a company vehicle," Maya responded evenly. "LTM Consulting. I can provide documentation." Hansen snorted. "Documentation she probably printed at Kinko's. I've seen this before, Mallory. They set up fake companies, fake registrations, use them to move drugs or stolen goods. It's textbook." "I'm not a criminal," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "If you run my plates, you'll see the vehicle is legally registered. If you check my license, you'll see I have no record. I'm a businesswoman. That's all." Hansen stepped close to her, so close she could smell the coffee on his breath and see the contempt in his eyes. "Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I've been doing this for 12 years. 12 years of protecting this community from people like you. I know a criminal when I see one. And I am never wrong." He jabbed a finger toward her chest. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who got too comfortable. Someone who thought she could drive around in a car she doesn't deserve, in a neighborhood that doesn't belong to her, and nobody would ask questions. Well, I'm asking questions. And I don't like the answers I'm getting." Maya said nothing. She had learned long ago that arguing with men like Hansen only made things worse. They didn't want explanations. They didn't want the truth. They wanted submission. They wanted to see fear. She refused to give him either. Officer Janet Pierce had been quiet throughout the encounter, observing rather than participating. Now she approached the Escalade and peered through the window at the registration visible on the dashboard. "Derek," she said, her voice uncertain, "the registration looks legitimate. It's registered to LTM Consulting at a downtown Atlanta address." "Probably forged," Hansen dismissed without even looking. Pierce pulled out her phone and began typing. A few moments later, her eyes widened slightly. "Derek, LTM Consulting is a real company. It's a legitimate consulting firm with offices downtown. Government contracts, corporate clients. This woman might actually be telling the truth." For just a moment, doubt flickered across Hansen's face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by something harder. Something more dangerous. Pride. "Search the vehicle," Hansen ordered. "I guarantee we'll find something. These people always have something to hide. These people." The words hung in the air, and several members of the watching crowd exchanged uncomfortable glances. Marcus Williams, still recording, zoomed in on Hansen's face as he spoke. Mallory opened the driver's door and began rifling through Maya's belongings. Her designer handbag was dumped onto the hood of the car, its contents scattered carelessly. Lipstick, wallet, business cards, a small notebook. Nothing incriminating. Nothing illegal. But then Mallory picked up her phone. Maya's blood ran cold. The phone was encrypted with federal-level security. Mallory couldn't access its contents without the proper authorization. But the phone itself could raise questions. It was government-issued, with features that no ordinary businesswoman would need. Mallory turned the phone over in his hands, examining it with growing interest. "This is an interesting device," he mused. "Looks almost military-grade. Why would a consultant need this kind of hardware?" "I handle sensitive client information," Maya replied, her cover story flowing automatically. "Corporate security is a major concern in my line of work." Mallory's eyes met hers, and for a terrible moment, Maya thought she saw recognition there. Did he know? Had he heard something through his criminal contacts? Was her cover already blown? But Mallory just shrugged and set the phone aside. "Check the back," he told Hansen. "See if there's anything in the cargo area." While Hansen moved to search the rear of the Escalade, Maya's phone buzzed on the hood of the patrol car where Mallory had left it. The screen lit up with a message notification. Maya couldn't see the screen from where she stood, but Mallory could. His eyes scanned the preview, and the color drained from his face. The message read, "Thompson, operation status. Extraction team on standby. Await further instructions. Thompson. Extraction team. Operation." Mallory looked at Maya with new eyes. The casual cruelty was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. He grabbed Hansen's arm and pulled him aside, speaking in urgent whispers that Maya couldn't quite make out. But she didn't need to hear them to know what was happening. Mallory had heard the name Thompson before. Whispers in criminal circles about a federal agent getting too close. Warnings from the councilman's network about an undercover operative who was building a case against them. Maya Thompson. The pieces were falling into place in Mallory's corrupt mind. Hansen, however, was too arrogant to listen. His voice rose above the whispers, loud enough for Maya and several bystanders to hear. I don't care what you think you saw on her phone. She's a criminal. I know she's a criminal. And I'm going to prove it. He strode back to Maya with renewed determination. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me where you got this car. You're going to tell me who you work for. And you're going to tell me what you're really doing in my town. I've already told you everything, Maya said calmly. I'm the CEO of LTM Consulting. The vehicle belongs to my company. I was simply stopping for gas on my way to a meeting. Hansen's face twisted with rage. You think you're smart, don't you? You think you're going to talk your way out of this? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. No one is going to believe your word over mine. You know why? Because I wear this badge. I represent law and order. And people like you? You're nothing. You're less than nothing. The crowd had grown to nearly 30 people now. Some watched in uncomfortable silence. Others openly recorded, their phones capturing every word of Hansen's tirade. A few shook their heads in disgust, but none intervened. They knew better than to challenge a police officer, even one who was clearly in the wrong. Hansen continued his verbal assault, each word designed to humiliate and degrade. I run things around here. I've been protecting this community since before you probably dropped out of high school. And I can tell just by looking at you exactly what kind of person you are. The fancy clothes, the expensive car, it's all a front. Underneath, you're just another criminal trying to get one over on honest, hard-working people. Maya remained silent, her expression neutral. But inside, she was counting. Counting the violations. Counting the charges. Counting the years this man was adding to his eventual sentence with every word he spoke. You want to know what's going to happen now? Hansen asked, leaning close again. I'm going to tear this car apart. I'm going to find whatever you're hiding. And then I'm going to personally escort you to a jail cell where you belong. And when you're sitting in that cell, crying about how unfair life is, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you brought this on yourself by not knowing your place. He straightened up and addressed the crowd with a theatrical wave of his hand. Let this be a lesson to everyone watching. This is what happens when people forget where they belong. This is what happens when criminals think they can flaunt their ill-gotten gains in front of law-abiding citizens. Marcus Williams' phone captured it all. The arrogance. The racism. The complete and total abuse of power. The video was still rolling, and Marcus had no intention of stopping it. Officer Pierce approached Hansen once more, her voice low and urgent. Derek, I ran her name through the system. She's clean. No warrants. No prior arrests. No criminal history of any kind. Then she's good at covering her tracks, Hansen snapped. Keep looking. Pierce hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. But she didn't push further. She didn't stand up for the innocent woman being brutalized in front of her. She remained silent, and in that silence, she became complicit. Mallory, meanwhile, had retreated to his patrol car. Through the window, Maya could see him speaking urgently into his personal cell phone. Not his radio. His phone. Making a call he didn't want anyone to hear. Warning someone. Alerting the network. The realization hit Maya like a physical blow. Her cover wasn't just at risk. It was already compromised. Mallory had seen the message on her phone. He had put the pieces together. And now he was telling someone that the woman Derek Hansen had just arrested might be the federal agent they had been warned about. 3 years of work. 17 arrests. Hundreds of hours of dangerous undercover operations. All of it crumbling because a racist cop couldn't accept that a black woman might legitimately own a nice car. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Maya stood in the blazing Georgia sun, her hands cuffed behind her back, her wrist swelling where the metal bit into her skin. The heat was oppressive, radiating from the pavement beneath her feet and the patrol car beside her in waves that made the air shimmer. Sweat soaked through her white blouse, and her mouth was dry with thirst. Can I please have some water? Maya asked, her voice hoarse. It's extremely hot. Hansen laughed, a sharp bark of amusement that made several bystanders wince. Water? You want water? Criminals don't get room service, sweetheart. Maybe you should have thought about hydration before you decided to steal an $80,000 vehicle. I didn't steal anything, Maya said quietly. And I have the right to humane treatment while in custody. Rights? Hansen stepped closer, his face inches from hers. You're worried about rights? The only right you have is the right to remain silent. And I suggest you exercise it before I add more charges to your arrest report. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward his patrol car. You're going to sit in here while we finish searching your vehicle. And you're going to think about what happens to people who lie to police officers. The back seat of Hansen's patrol car was stifling. No air conditioning reached the rear compartment, and the vinyl seats were hot enough to burn through Maya's jeans. The windows didn't open. The doors didn't unlock from the inside. She was trapped in a metal box designed to make suspects as uncomfortable as possible. Through the window, Maya watched as Hansen and Mallory continued their search of her Escalade. They pulled out floor mats. They opened compartments. They rifled through the glove box, scattering papers across the passenger seat. They were thorough, methodical, and completely convinced they would find something incriminating. They wouldn't. There was nothing to find. The vehicle was registered legally. The paperwork was authentic. Maya's cover was airtight, built by FBI specialists who had thought of every contingency. But that wouldn't stop Hansen. Men like him didn't need evidence. They manufactured it. 20 minutes into the search, a Mercedes-Benz pulled into the gas station. A white man in an expensive suit stepped out, and Maya's blood ran cold when she recognized him. Harold Mitchell. County Commissioner. Derek Hansen's father-in-law. The man who had protected Hansen from 43 complaints of misconduct. Mitchell approached his son-in-law with the casual familiarity of family. Derek, what's going on here? Saw the patrol cars from the road. Hansen puffed up visibly, proud to show off for his protector. Just doing my job, sir. Caught another one trying to pass off a stolen vehicle as her own. Black female, driving an Escalade worth more than most people make in a year. Classic drug money situation. Mitchell glanced toward the patrol car where Maya sat watching. His expression flickered with something that might have been approval before he masked it behind a neutral facade. Good work, son. Keep our community safe. He patted Hansen on the shoulder. Let me know if you need anything. He drove away without a second glance at the woman being held without cause in the back of a police cruiser. The message was unmistakable. Hansen was protected from the highest levels of local government. Nothing Maya said, nothing any witness saw, would change that. Or so they believed. An hour into her detention, Maya was finally allowed out of the sweltering patrol car. But only because Hansen had devised a new humiliation. He made her sit on the curb at the edge of the parking lot, hands still cuffed behind her back, while he stood over her delivering a lecture for the benefit of the watching crowd. See, this is exactly what's wrong with society today, Hansen announced, his voice carrying across the gas station. People think they can just show up and take whatever they want. They think because they put on nice clothes and drive fancy cars, nobody's going to ask questions. But I ask questions. That's my job. Protecting honest citizens from people who want to steal from them. He looked down at Maya with undisguised contempt. You probably thought you were clever. Probably thought you could drive through here and nobody would notice. But I noticed. I always notice. Because unlike some people, I actually care about this community. The irony was so thick Maya could almost taste it. This man, who had violated her civil rights in a dozen different ways over the past hour, was lecturing her about caring for the community. This man, who was protected by a network of corrupt officials, was accusing her of being a criminal. Maya said nothing. She sat on that curb, her wrists aching, her throat parched, her dignity assaulted at every turn, and she said nothing. Because she knew something Hansen didn't know. She knew that every word he spoke was being recorded by her wire. She knew that multiple witnesses were capturing everything on video. She knew that the extraction team was on standby, awaiting instructions. And she knew that karma had a way of finding men like Derek Hansen. But before karma could arrive, things got worse. Hansen received a call on his radio. Backup from the county sheriff's office was arriving. Not to help with the search, but to handle what Hansen was now describing as a multi-jurisdictional vehicle theft investigation. 2 more officers arrived. Then 3 more. The parking lot began to look like a law enforcement convention, with 7 officers now surrounding a single unarmed woman who had done nothing wrong. Each new arrival received Hansen's version of events. His lies spread through the group like poison. The woman was combative. The woman had refused to cooperate. The woman had made threats. The woman was almost certainly involved in drug trafficking, vehicle theft, or both. Not one of these new officers thought to question the story. Not one considered that the calm, well-dressed woman sitting silently on the curb might be telling the truth. They saw a black woman in handcuffs, and they assumed she belonged there. This is how the system works. Not through individual acts of racism, though those certainly existed. but through collective assumptions, shared biases, and the unquestioning acceptance of narratives that confirm what people already believe. Derek Hansen didn't need proof. He just needed other officers to share his assumptions. Maya watched the gathering with clinical detachment, noting faces, badge numbers, names spoken in casual conversation. Every officer who participated in this unlawful detention was adding their name to a list. They just didn't know it yet. Her phone buzzed again, still sitting on the hood of the patrol car where Mallory had left it. The screen displayed a new message, and this time, Maya could read it from across the parking lot. ETA 10 minutes. All teams standing by. Mallory saw it too. His face, already pale, went completely white. He rushed to Hansen and grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the crowd with unusual urgency. "Derek, we need to stop this," Mallory hissed, his voice barely audible. "We need to let her go. Right now." Hansen yanked his arm free. "What are you talking about? We've almost got her. I can feel it. You don't understand. That phone. Those messages. I've heard things, Derek. Warnings from people who know things. There's a federal agent in the area, someone named Thompson, who's been building cases against certain people." Hansen stared at him blankly. So her name is Thompson. Maya Thompson. What if she's the one they've been warning about? Hansen's response was instantaneous and dismissive. "That's ridiculous. Look at her. She's not a federal agent. She's just another criminal who thought she could outsmart the system." "Derek, please," Mallory pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. "If you're wrong about this, we're finished. Both of us." But Hansen was beyond listening. His arrogance had become a prison of its own making. He had spent 12 years behaving badly without consequence, and he had come to believe that consequences simply didn't apply to him. "I'm never wrong," he declared with absolute certainty. "I've been doing this job for 12 years. I know a criminal when I see one. And in about 5 minutes, I'm going to prove it to everyone, including you." He strode back to Maya with renewed determination. "Stand up. We're taking you downtown. I'm personally going to enjoy watching you explain how a woman with no job history managed to afford an $80,000 vehicle." Maya rose slowly, her knees stiff from sitting on the hard concrete. "I have a job history. I'm the CEO of LTM Consulting. You can verify that with a simple internet search." "I don't need the internet to tell me what I already know," Hansen sneered. "I've got 12 years of experience, and my experience tells me you're a criminal." He started reading her rights, reciting the Miranda warning with the bored cadence of someone who had done it thousands of times before. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." He never finished the sentence. Because that's when the black SUVs arrived. The sound came first. The rumble of powerful engines, growing louder by the second. Then the vehicles appeared, 3 identical black Chevrolet Suburbans turning into the gas station with the coordinated precision of a military convoy. They screeched to a halt in a semicircle around the parking lot, blocking every possible exit. Before the engines had even died, the doors flew open and figures emerged. 8 of them, wearing tactical vests emblazoned with 3 letters that changed everything. FBI. Special Agent Marcus Reynolds led the team, his credentials held high as he strode toward the cluster of confused local officers. His voice boomed across the parking lot with absolute authority. "FBI. Nobody move. This area is now under federal jurisdiction." Hansen stood frozen, his hand still gripping Maya's arm, his mouth hanging open in shock. The other officers instinctively stepped back, their hands moving away from their weapons. Whatever they had expected when they showed up to help with a routine vehicle theft investigation, this wasn't it. Reynolds walked straight past Hansen as if he didn't exist. He stopped in front of Maya, his expression professional but his eyes showing a hint of concern. "Special Agent Thompson," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Are you injured?" The words landed like bombs. "Special Agent Thompson. FBI." Maya shook her head slightly. "I'm fine. But I'll need these handcuffs removed." Reynolds nodded to one of his team members, who produced a key and quickly unlocked Maya's restraints. She rubbed her wrists, noting the angry red marks where the metal had cut into her skin. Those marks would be photographed, documented, and added to the growing list of charges against Officer Derek Hansen. Hansen still hadn't moved. His face had gone from red to white, the blood draining from his cheeks as the reality of his situation began to sink in. His mouth moved, forming words that didn't quite emerge. There must be some mistake," he finally managed. "She can't be. I mean, look at her." Reynolds turned to face him for the first time, and his expression could have frozen water. "Look at her? What exactly should I be looking at, Officer Hansen? Her skin color? Her gender? Which physical characteristic convinced you that she was a criminal? Hansen stammered, grasping for words. She was driving an expensive car. She didn't have. I thought. You thought, Reynolds repeated flatly. That's the problem, officer. You thought. You made assumptions based on your biases instead of evidence. And now you're standing in the middle of a crime scene where the only crime that occurred was committed by you. He stepped closer to Hansen, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Special Agent Thompson is a 3-year veteran of undercover operations. She's responsible for 17 arrests and the dismantling of multiple criminal enterprises. And you just assaulted her, falsely arrested her, and violated approximately a dozen of her constitutional rights, all while being recorded by. He glanced around at the crowd. I count at least 15 cell phones. Not to mention your own body camera and the body cameras of every officer present. Hansen's legs seemed to give out beneath him. He sagged against his patrol car, his face a mask of dawning horror. But the real shock was yet to come. Officer Robert Mallory had been edging toward his patrol car ever since the FBI vehicles appeared. His movements were subtle, almost casual, as if he simply wanted to get out of the way. But Maya had been watching him. She had been watching him for months. When Mallory made his break, it wasn't subtle at all. He turned and sprinted for his cruiser, reaching for the door handle with desperate urgency. He made it approximately 10 feet before 2 FBI agents tackled him to the ground. His face hit the pavement hard, and his hands were wrenched behind his back. Within seconds, he was in handcuffs, lying in the exact position he had watched Maya occupy for the past hour. Reynolds looked down at Mallory with something approaching satisfaction. Officer Robert Mallory. Now why would an innocent police officer run from the FBI? That's a very interesting question, don't you think? Mallory said nothing. His face was pressed against the hot asphalt, his eyes squeezed shut. Here's what's going to happen, Reynolds announced, addressing all the officers present. Officer Derek Hansen, you are under arrest for civil rights violations under color of law, false arrest, false imprisonment, assault, filing false police reports, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Officer Robert Mallory, you are under arrest for conspiracy, accepting bribes from a criminal enterprise, obstruction of justice, and violations of the RICO Act. Both of you will be transported to federal custody immediately. 2 agents hauled Mallory to his feet while 2 others approached Hansen. For a moment, it looked like Hansen might resist. His hand twitched toward his service weapon, his eyes darting around for an escape route that didn't exist. Don't, Maya said quietly. It was the first word she had spoken directly to Hansen since the FBI arrived. Don't make this worse than it already is. Something in her voice cut through Hansen's panic. Maybe it was the calm certainty. Maybe it was the recognition that he was completely and utterly defeated. His hand fell away from his weapon, and he allowed himself to be handcuffed without further resistance. The same handcuffs. The same position. The same humiliation. As Hansen was led toward one of the federal vehicles, Maya stepped into his path. He tried to look away, but she moved to maintain eye contact. You told me to know my place, she said quietly, so only he could hear. You said people like me were nothing. You said no one would believe my word over yours. She gestured at the crowd, at the phone still recording, at the FBI agents swarming the parking lot. This is my place. Standing here with my badge while you're led away in handcuffs. And as for who people will believe. She almost smiled. I think 47 million views will speak for themselves. Hansen said nothing. There was nothing left to say. As he was placed in the back of the federal SUV, Marcus Williams lowered his phone for the first time in over an hour. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wide. Did that just happen? He whispered to no one in particular. Did that actually just happen? A woman beside him nodded slowly. I think, she said, we just watched something historic. Reynolds approached Maya with a tablet, showing her a live feed of multiple locations across the city. Other FBI teams were executing arrest warrants simultaneously. The councilman's office. A warehouse on the south side. A home in Buckhead. One by one, the members of the criminal network Maya had spent 3 years infiltrating were being rounded up. 17 additional arrests so far, Reynolds reported. Including Councilman Price himself. He was picked up at a restaurant downtown about 15 minutes ago. We've got everything, Thompson. Financial records, communications, witness statements. The whole operation is finished. Maya nodded, but she felt strangely hollow. 3 years of her life had led to this moment. 3 years of pretending to be someone she wasn't, of building relationships with people she knew would eventually be arrested, of lying every single day to everyone around her. And it had all nearly fallen apart because a racist cop decided she didn't deserve to drive a nice car. Are you sure you're okay? Reynolds asked, studying her face with concern. I will be, Maya said. But first, I want to watch. She turned to see Hansen's face pressed against the window of the federal vehicle. He was watching her too, and for the first time, she saw something other than arrogance in his expression. Fear. Derek Hansen, who had spent 12 years terrorizing innocent people without consequence, who had racked up 43 complaints that never stuck, who believed himself untouchable because of his family connections, was finally afraid. Good, Maya thought. Now he knows how it feels. The federal courtroom was packed on the day of Derek Hansen's sentencing. 6 months had passed since the confrontation at the Chevron station, and in that time, the case had become a national story. The video that Marcus Williams recorded had been viewed over 50 million times. It had been featured on every major news network, analyzed by legal experts, and cited in congressional hearings on police reform. Hansen sat at the defense table, a shell of the swaggering bully who had terrorized Maya Thompson on that hot August afternoon. His uniform was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow-eyed expression of a man who has finally realized the depth of his mistakes. His supporters were gone, having abandoned him the moment it became clear that no political connection could save him from federal prosecution. Maya sat in the gallery, dressed in a simple navy suit. She had testified at length during the trial, recounting every detail of her detention with clinical precision. The body camera footage had been played. The witness statements had been read. The recording from her wire had been entered into evidence. Hansen's defense had attempted to argue that his actions were the result of reasonable suspicion, that he was simply doing his job based on his training and experience. But the evidence told a different story. A story of bias, of cruelty, of systematic abuse of power that had been protected and enabled for over a decade. The judge, an elderly black woman named Patricia Morrison, had listened to the arguments with an expression that revealed nothing. Now, as she prepared to deliver her sentence, a profound silence fell over the courtroom. Officer Derek Hansen, she began, her voice measured and deliberate, you have been found guilty on multiple counts of civil rights violations, false arrest, assault, false imprisonment, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice. Before I deliver your sentence, I want to make sure you understand exactly why you are standing before me today. She looked at Hansen over the rim of her glasses. You were given a sacred trust. When you took your oath of office, you swore to protect and serve all citizens equally under the law. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon to terrorize innocent people. You made assumptions based on the color of a person's skin. You abused your authority to humiliate and degrade. And you did so believing that you were untouchable, that your connections would protect you from ever facing consequences. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the courtroom. Do you remember what you said to Special Agent Thompson on the day of her arrest? You told her to know her place. You told her that people like her were nothing. You told her that no one would believe her word over yours. She gestured toward the packed gallery, toward the cameras recording the proceedings for broadcast. 50 million people have seen the video of your actions that day. 50 million people witnessed you abuse an innocent woman. And today, 50 million people will watch you receive your sentence. So let me tell you something, Officer Hansen. It appears that you are the one who didn't know his place. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Hansen's lawyer placed a restraining hand on his client's arm. For your crimes against Special Agent Thompson, and for the pattern of abuse that has been documented throughout your career, this court sentences you to 22 years in federal prison. The number hit Hansen like a physical blow. He staggered in his seat, his face crumpling. His lawyer immediately began speaking in his ear, but Hansen wasn't listening. He was staring at Maya, his eyes filled with something that might have been regret, might have been hatred, might have been simple despair. Maya met his gaze steadily. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a quiet sense of justice finally being served. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, you are permanently barred from holding any law enforcement position. Your pension is forfeit. And upon your release, you will be required to register as a civil rights offender in any jurisdiction where you reside. Hansen's wife sobbed loudly from the front row. His father-in-law, Harold Mitchell, was notably absent. The county commissioner had resigned 2 months earlier, shortly after news broke of his role in protecting Hansen over the years. He was currently under investigation for his own potential civil rights violations. The ripple effects of that afternoon at the Chevron station had extended far beyond Derek Hansen. Officer Robert Mallory had pleaded guilty and was cooperating with federal prosecutors, providing information about the councilman's network that had led to dozens of additional arrests. Councilman Raymond Price was awaiting trial on 37 federal charges, including racketeering, bribery, and conspiracy. The entire corrupt network that Maya had spent 3 years infiltrating had collapsed in a matter of weeks. And it had all started because Derek Hansen couldn't accept that a black woman might legitimately own a nice car. After the sentencing, Maya stepped outside the courthouse to find a crowd of reporters waiting. Microphones were thrust toward her, cameras flashing, voices calling out questions. She took a deep breath and stepped up to a waiting podium. "Today's sentence sends an important message," she said, her voice calm and steady. "No one is above the law. Not police officers, not politicians, not anyone. The badge is meant to protect, not to oppress. And when that sacred trust is violated, there must be consequences." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I want to speak to everyone who has ever been profiled, harassed, or humiliated by someone in a position of power. Your experiences are real. Your pain is valid. And you deserve better. What happened to me that day at the gas station happens to black Americans every single day. The only difference is that I had backup coming. Most people don't." Her voice grew stronger. "That's why cases like this matter. That's why we have to keep fighting, keep documenting, keep speaking out. Because change doesn't happen by accident. It happens when good people refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice." A reporter called out, "Agent Thompson, do you have any message for the other officers who stood by and watched while you were being mistreated?" Maya considered the question. "Officer Janet Pierce has cooperated fully with the investigation. She has provided testimony that helped convict Hansen and others. I believe she genuinely regrets not speaking up sooner. As for the others who participated in my detention without questioning what they were seeing," she shook her head. "They failed their oaths. They saw an injustice being committed and chose to look the other way. I hope this case makes them think about the choices they make when they put on their uniforms." Another reporter asked about her future plans. "I'm taking some time off," Maya admitted. 3 years undercover takes a toll. But I'll be back. This work is too important to walk away from." The press conference ended, and Maya walked down the courthouse steps toward a waiting car. Marcus Williams was there, standing at the edge of the crowd. The teenager who had recorded the video that changed everything. Maya stopped and extended her hand. "Thank you," she said simply. "Your video made all the difference." Marcus shook her hand, looking slightly overwhelmed. "I just recorded what I saw. It didn't seem right, what they were doing to you." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Maya said. "One person willing to bear witness. One person refusing to look away." She got into the car and watched through the window as the crowd receded. The courthouse, the reporters, the onlookers, they all shrank into the distance as the vehicle pulled away. 22 years. Derek Hansen would spend the next 2 decades behind bars, plenty of time to contemplate the choices that had led him there. Plenty of time to think about the woman he had dismissed as nothing. Plenty of time to remember his own words, "I'm never wrong." He had never been more wrong in his entire life. 3 months later, Maya attended a community event in Atlanta where the FBI was presenting the results of the investigation. The numbers were staggering. 23 people indicted. 15 convictions so far, with more trials pending. Over $12 million in illegal assets seized. An entire network of corruption dismantled. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. The real story was in the faces of the community members who attended the event. People who had been afraid to speak up, who had been silenced by threats and intimidation, who had given up hope that anything would ever change. They looked at Maya with something like wonder, as if she represented proof that justice was possible. After the event, an elderly woman approached Maya. Her name was Harriet Johnson, and 30 years ago, her son had been beaten by police officers who were never held accountable. "I never thought I'd see the day," Harriet said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I never thought I'd see one of them actually go to prison for what they did." Maya took the woman's hands in her own. "I'm sorry about your son. I'm sorry it took this long." Harriet shook her head. "Don't be sorry. Be proud. You did what nobody else could do. You made them pay." Maya thought about those words for a long time afterward. Made them pay. Was that what she had done? Was that what justice was supposed to feel like? She wasn't sure. She knew that Derek Hansen would suffer for his crimes. She knew that Robert Mallory would spend years in prison. She knew that Councilman Price would likely never see freedom again. But she also knew that for every corrupt officer who was caught, there were others who weren't. For every victim who saw justice, there were thousands who never would. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But today, at least, there was one small victory to celebrate. The sun was setting over Atlanta as Maya drove through the city she had sworn to protect. The skyline glittered in the fading light, beautiful and complicated and full of stories waiting to be told. Somewhere in a federal prison, Derek Hansen was beginning the first night of a 22-year sentence. Somewhere in another prison, Robert Mallory was contemplating the choices that had led him there. And somewhere in the vast machinery of the justice system, the wheels were still turning, processing cases, pursuing investigations, slowly grinding toward accountability. Maya had spent 3 years of her life working toward this outcome. It had cost her relationships, sleep, peace of mind. There had been moments when she wondered if it was worth it, if anything she did would make a difference. Now she knew the answer. It was worth it. It would always be worth it. Because justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about sending a message to everyone watching. It's about telling the Derek Hansons of the world that their actions have consequences. It's about showing the victims that they are seen, believed, and valued. And it's about reminding everyone, everywhere, of a simple truth that too many people forget: you never know who you're dealing with. You never know whose story will be the one that brings everything crashing down. Derek Hanson thought he was untouchable. He thought his badge and his connections made him invincible. He thought he could treat people however he wanted without ever facing consequences. He was wrong. And now, the whole world knows it. So here is the lesson, the moral of this story: what goes around comes around. Always. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes decades. But eventually, the truth comes out. Eventually, the bill comes due. Eventually, karma arrives. And sometimes karma arrives at a gas station in Marietta, Georgia, on a hot Tuesday afternoon, wearing an FBI vest and reading you your rights. Remember that the next time you think about treating someone like they're less than human. Remember Derek Hanson's face as he was led away in handcuffs. Remember the 22 years he'll spend behind bars. And remember Maya Thompson, the woman he called nothing, who turned out to be the one who brought down an entire network of corruption. You never know who you're dealing with. Treat everyone with respect. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in Maya's position? Would you have revealed your identity to stop the humiliation, or would you have stayed in character like she did? Drop your answer in the comments below. And tell me, do you think 22 years was a fair sentence for Derek Hanson? Was it too harsh? Not harsh enough? Let me know what you think. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that justice is still possible in this world, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And turn on notifications so you never miss when karma comes calling. This is Black Lives Stories. We're here every week with new stories of justice, karma, and truth. Black stories. Black voices. Black justice. Until next time, remember, treat everyone with respect, because you never know who you're dealing with. Peace.